Yes, The Queen's Gambit was a book long before Netflix came along. This week we are reviewing Walter Tevi's 1983 page-turner, The Queen's Gambit. Here are 5 things you will love about The Queen's Gambit. Beth Harmon lost her parents at a young age and is sent to an orphanage and eagerly waits to be adopted. At the age of 8, she develops a downer addiction. Yes, you heard that right. The setting is the 1960s, and they did a lot of weird stuff to people back then, like giving tranquilizers to kids and methamphetamines to housewives. In the mid-40s, they injected people with plutonium and uranium just to see what would happen. Thankfully, we've risen from the dark ages. Now we give children Ritalin and gender reassignment surgeries. The childhood downer addiction is actually based on the author's own experiences as a child when he was given tranquilizers, which causes him to develop an alcohol addiction. The same thing happens to Beth, the main character in our story. She is addicted to pills and alcohol. We learn about Beth's childhood, her dealings with teachers, headmasters, other kids at the orphanage, and her discovery of chess at a young age. Beth plays her first game in the basement of a dormitory with the janitor, where she realizes her calling in life. The janitor introduces her to another man in his chess club, and he knows that she has a gift. And that leads us to the first thing you will love about this story: inside the head of a prodigy. After an unfortunate incident involving Beth's pill addiction, she is banned from having contact with the janitor so she can focus on other things. Since the janitor is the only person who plays chess, Beth is unable to play, but this does not stop her. Although she has just a short introduction to the game and does not play it for several years, the chess book she reads allows her to play games in her head. As the years pass, a funny thing happens. She does not yearn to play chess as much as we'd expect. She doesn't sneak out of the dorm to play a game or two or anything like that. She is perfectly content to read a book on chess and simply play the games in her mind. This gives us a strong understanding of what it is to be a prodigy, where she can enjoy her passion without the inconvenience of dealing with other people. Later, as an adult, when she plays in tournaments and is able to nourish her passion more freely, she goes to a fellow chess player's apartment and observes Benny did not own a TV or a stereo. His apartment was for eating, sleeping, and chess. This lifestyle is very appealing to her. Eat, sleep, chess is a perfect formula for the prodigy, Beth Harmon. It's also worth noting that Beth does not seem to have any healthy relationships. She has a few romantic interludes during her chess touring, but doesn't dwell on him. Her foster mother is utilitarian to her, and she doesn't really keep in touch over the years with anyone at the orphanage. But often characters are defined by their relationships or lack of them, as we all tend to be in real life, and we realize that part of being a prodigy is that sometimes they don't have lots of extroverted relationships. They are more single-mindedly focused on their craft, and the other aspects of what we deem as healthy human interaction are pushed aside. Prodigies are alone, but they are not lonely. As we go through the first few chapters, the reader will notice that the author starts the story off at a slow pace, and we feel a sense of kinship with this character, which really draws us in. A rule of thumb for contemporary writing is that you start your story off with a bang. Think of the opening sequence to Jurassic Park. New writers are taught to really hook the reader in the first opening pages. Steven Spielberg always delivers on this. Since the book was written in the early 80s, the author doesn't do this, and instead, we get to know the character of Beth, what she's been through, what she's going through, and her eventual adoption by foster parents. All of this increases the tension when we finally do arrive at the scenes involving her chess playing. The author's delay of the chess tournaments has paid off. By the time we get to them, we are enthralled. We wouldn't have cared nearly as much for the chess playing if the author had just tossed us into it, like Spielberg tossing his actors into a shark tank. And that leads us to number 2, the first tournament. After spending some time in Beth's head at the orphanage and the world of her adopted parents, we are thrust into her first chess tournament in Chapter 4, and that's when the author's real skill is flushed out as he describes the games. Cook brought the knight down anyway. Beth traded pawns over on the other side and opened the file for her rook. Cook kept nagging her king with complications. She knew she could see that there was really no danger yet if she didn't let it bluff her. She brought the rook out and then doubled up with her queen. She liked that arrangement. It looked to her imagination like 2 cannons lined up ready to fire. By now, you are probably wondering if you need to know how to play chess to enjoy this book. The answer is no, and many Amazon reviewers confirm this. A knowledge of chess is not needed. The author lays out tightly knit prose with chess moves that are interlaced with Beth and her opponent's reactions. The descriptions never put the reader to sleep. It's one thing to write about action when a Dan Brown character is trying to crack Da Vinci's Code, but another to keep our attention in a game of chess, and the author excels at this challenging task. And there are quite a few games described as she rises through the ranks and plays several tournaments around the country country and eventually around the world. It's a testament to the writer's skill that not one of these chess interludes bores us. Here's a sample from another tournament. She began attacking before he had the chance to castle, at first with a bishop sacrifice, and then by forcing him to give up the knight and 2 pawns to defend his king. By the 16th move, she was threatening combinations all over the board, and although she was never able to bring one off, the threat was enough. He was forced to yield to her a bit at a time, bottled up and irrevocably behind. He gave up. She was walking happily along the Rue de Rivoli by noon, enjoying the sunshine. There's a lot of technical strategies described, like the Torre attack, Sicilian defense, Catalan opening, and of course the Queen's Gambit, but they are so effectively woven with the action that we ride along with the author and nod as though we understand the game perfectly. One way authors define the main character is through the relationship of other characters in the story. Some are antagonists, some are allies, opponents, or confidants, and that leads us to number 3, my favorite side character in the book, Mrs. Wheatley. Mrs. Wheatley is Beth's foster parent, never referred to as Mom by Beth, but rather Mrs. Wheatley. Her husband doesn't seem to be around much and leaves shortly after they adopt Beth, in a manner as though a business deal has just been closed. The Wheatleys do not have a bad breakup with lots of drama, and it seems like their relationship has always been cold and distant, and they are just fine with that, thank you very much. Mrs. Wheatley doesn't come off as a very good parent either. She doesn't really treat Beth as a daughter, but rather as a friend. I mean, I don't have kids, but even I know not to do that. After Beth starts making money at her tournaments, as a minor, she needs someone to handle her funds and entrusts Mrs. Wheatley to be her accountant and travel agent as she transverses the tournament circuit. We note a few odd things, namely that Mr. Wheatley seems to be out of the picture without much fanfare. We wonder if getting a foster child was a condition of granting a divorce, which seems odd since Mrs. Wheatley doesn't seem to yearn for a daughter like other potential foster parents might. And Mrs. Wheatley also has a taste for alcohol and downer pills, which helps to enable Beth to her childhood addiction. This does not seem to be a likable character at first, and it's a mystery as to why she takes such a detached approach to her marriage and parenthood, but we realize that this is actually the perfect parent for Beth since it allows her to pursue what she wants. The obvious trope is to have her foster parents block her passion for chess, to have them steal her winnings, but honestly, I felt for Beth, and I think she deserves an ally in her story, and that's what Mrs. Wheatley is to her. She's exactly what our hero needs in her life, someone who just gets the hell out of the way and lets her play chess and enjoy her vices. I was pleasantly surprised by the lack of stereotyping in foster parents, and that leads us to number 4, the lack of tropes. There's a trope in Hollywood movies that I've grown tired of, and that's where a character is shown to be super intelligent by depicting them playing chess. There's actually a YouTube video with 100 checkmates from movies out there. I think the last movie I saw this in was Charlie Wilson's War. I wanted to punch Tom Hanks for allowing it to stay in the script. It's tired and it's been done to death, so I was kind of dreading a book on a chess prodigy. And of course, a woman playing chess in a man's world seems like it might be a trope minefield where the young lady has to upstage men. Strong female characters these days seem to just be a collection of toxic male traits applied to a female. If you want to see movies with strong female characters, then check out anything by James Cameron. In my opinion, he's the best feminist filmmaker out there. But back to the Queen's Gambit, here's the thing. None of those tropes are in the book. The men are not toxic or chauvinistic. Her fellow players are quite civilized when it comes to losing to her. Most of them are happy to tell her good game and shake her hand like gentlemen. And as I said, the foster parents don't even fit any sort of mold. They are quite original. It's the lack of tropes in a story with huge potential for a trope meteor shower that draws us in by keeping us guessing. We assume we know what's coming, but we are always pleasantly surprised as we charge into each new chapter. It's a very unpredictable story. It just goes to show that this book is not about a female chess player. It's about addiction, and the addict just happens to play chess, and she also happens to be a young female. The lack of tropes really allows the reader to focus on the main character instead of a bunch of eye-rolling gotcha-style upsmanship. And that leads us to the number 5 thing you will love about the Queen's Gambit. Number 5, a friend named Beth Harmon. By the end of this novel, I was reminded of that quote by Paul Sweeney. You know you've read a good book when you turn the last page and feel a little as if you have lost a friend. By the final chapter of this book, you really do feel a sense of camaraderie with Beth Harmon. And I absolutely need to plagiarize this quote from Sarah Miller's New Yorker book review. Anyone who has ever felt lost, rejected, or underestimated while nurturing a fierce, mute hope that something residing deep within them might somehow save their life would love this book. You do feel like you are in Beth's head and struggling with addiction right there with her. You understand the stakes, that if she doesn't pursue her calling, then she's a goner. And the stakes aren't whether she wins or loses, it's whether the addiction takes its toll and she ends up walking away from her calling. As an aspiring writer, I identified with this aspect of Beth's story, where if she could just get out there and show the world the one thing she excels at, every other problem in life would fall away like dead skin. I was very happy to be friends with Beth for a few hours, and now I also want to learn how to play chess. If a book motivates you to take up a hobby, then it's worth your time. That's it for this week. Stay tuned for more great book reviews. Coming up is Darkly Dreaming Dexter, Fight Club, and Wise Guy, the book that later became Goodfellas. Check out my own book, Grand Portage, about a man who buys a nuclear aircraft carrier and drags it through northern Minnesota. It's available on Amazon in paperback or Kindle. Don't forget to always protect your king and never stop reading.